Welcome to the Center for Visual Arts. My name is Miss Natalie and welcome to week 4 of art camp. So for this project we are going to do a candy still life. So we're going to go into our bag and we are going to pull out week 4. So you should have this weird gridded square and you should have some lovely candy and some watercolor paper in here. Great. And then aside from the bag, we're also going to, so we will need our red cup full of water, and then we'll also use our paintbrush. We'll need our paint rake that is starting to get more and more colorful, a pencil sharpener, and our watercolors. And I have some extra plaster craft from our last video, which was very helpful to have our sheet of plastic down for that because the table's not as messy as what it could have been. Anyway, we're going to open up week 4. And we are going to take out this 6x6, no, is it 6x6? I'm not sure what size it is. Let me measure it really quick. It's 9 by 9 inches of watercolor paper. We're going to take out this grid. We're going to take out our candy. So we can't eat the candy quite yet. We have to finish our project first. So to start out with, first we're going to grid out this sheet of paper using our ruler and a pencil. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that, so this grid has 9 squares and we want to make sure that this sheet of paper also has 9 squares. So we're going to measure it, and as you can see, it's 9 inches. Can you see it up here? So 9 inches by 9 inches. And if we go out to the square over here, this square is 3 inches by 3 inches. So this square and this square are both divisible by 3. So this square is going to be 3 times as large as this square. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 3 inches. So we're going to put a little marker on our, so we're going to, well, before I mention that, we're going to make sure that our end of our ruler, I don't know if you can see because it's clear. Oh, here we go. So if you can see, there's this little marker right here, and that's where the ruler actually does start. So we don't want to measure out from the end of our ruler. We want to measure out from this little marker right here on the ruler. So we're going to make sure that that marker matches up with the end of our paper. And we are going to put a little marker by 3 and 6. And so I did it lower to the paper right here. And now we're going to go to the middle paper right here. Make sure that the black marker over here matches up with the end of the paper. And we're going to do another mark by 3 and 6. And then we're going to go all the way up to the top of the paper and make sure that that black mark matches up with the piece of paper, the end of the piece of paper. And we're going to put another mark by 3 and by 6. So we should have 6 marks on our sheet of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our ruler and we're going to match up those lines. So any line we did at the 3-inch mark, we're going to match up with our ruler. And we're going to do a feathery light touch with our pencil and draw a line straight down. And we're going to do the same on this one. So this way we'll have 3 columns on our sheet of paper. So you probably can't see them. You can faintly see them, and that's why I did the feathery light touch, but you can barely see them. And then we're going to flip the piece over so that way our lines are running horizontal, and we're going to do that again. So we're going to match the black marker up with the edge of our paper, and we're going to do some more marks on the very bottom of our sheet of paper at the 3 and the 6. And then we'll go to this middle column right here that we just made. We're going to do a marker by the 3 and the 6. Remember to do your markers very lightly with your pencil. That way they're much easier to erase. And then we'll go to the top column right here, and we'll do a marker by 3 and 6. So we should have 6 marks on our sheet of paper again. And we're going to line those up just like we did before. And so what we're doing right in here is we're making a grid. And grids are very, very helpful when you're learning how to draw, especially when you get into like middle school and high school and even college, because it helps you kind of figure out the placement of things on an image. So like on a portrait or a landscape. So anyway, we have our grid done right here, and we have this grid as well. And so now we can open up our candy. And we're going to place it on this grid wherever we would like. So maybe I'll do a piece right here, here. Alright, so I have my pieces of candy laid out on this 3" by 3" grid, and you can lay them out however you would like. The candy's going to kind of cover the grid. And what we're going to do is this grid will kind of help us draw in the candy. So I think for me, I'm going to start drawing this pink swirly candy right here. And as you can see, it's in these 4 lower corners right here. So I'm going to go to the 4 lower corners right here. And I'm just going to start to draw in the piece of candy. So the center of this candy is kind of in the center of these 4 squares. So I'll kind of use that as a center point. So this part of the candy right here is going to be in this part. And I'm noticing that this piece of taffy isn't like a total circle. It's very kind of structural. And since taffy's kind of handmade, it's got kind of like a sculptural, clayish shape to it, I suppose. And I can see this little twisty things in this corner right here. And it's kind of, the end of it kind of meets the end of this square right here in the middle. So I think the twisty part will end right around here. Ooh. And there's a little swirl and a twist. And there's these weird crevices. And you may realize when you're drawing in the candy that some things don't match up as you thought they would, so maybe you have to redraw. And depending on the perspective that you're doing, which angle you are, you may want to do your thing from a bird's eye view. Otherwise, you can do it sitting down if you wanted to, if that makes you more comfortable. We're just going to lightly draw in the candy. There we go. Now some things may look a bit odd, just the way they're drawn, because you may not think of them to look like that. You can kind of use your pencil and kind of see how a mark is. So like this curve right here, I'm going to kind of trace up with my pencil to make sure I get that right angle. And I'm noticing how this end of the wrapper kind of meets almost the corner right over here. So I'm going to make sure that, there we go, kind of meets that point. Maybe I'll sketch in 1 or 2 of these creases. Alright, so now next I'm going to go off to this yellow piece, and I'm noticing how This piece kind of lays in between these two middle squares right here and kind of goes off into this top upper left corner square. This piece is a little bigger. You don't have to worry about being too exact. This is your piece of candy after all. This is kind of just a helpful tool that can help you later in life. So if you realize you don't like it now, that's okay. You can use it later on. And I'm noticing how this piece is a little off center from the middle of the square right here. It's just slightly off, so I'm going to find the center of this square and go slightly off as well. And I'm noticing how this wrapper does not intersect with this wrapper right here, so I'm going to make sure that there's that space. This is a big piece of candy, holy cow! And there's a bag sticking to me, goodness. Alright, so now we're going to draw in this strawberry shape. And I'm noticing how this end of the candy wrapper almost matches up with this line. So I'm going to kind of follow that as well. Now the end of these wrappers may be a little bit hard. So it may take a couple tries or two to make sure that you get that right angle. And you can always use your pencil and kind of make sure you get that right angle. And remember to just do a feathery light touch. Sometimes your first try will not be the right one, so you may have to redo it. Just like I'm doing. I've had to redo a couple of things already a couple of times. Alright, so this is a little funky. Alright, here we go. And if you want, you can draw in the swirls or your wrapper lines or the little strawberry seeds if you want to. But I think we're ready to start painting. So I'm going to bring out our helpful tool again, our Mr. Sun. So depending on where you're doing this art project, your light source may be in a different spot. I'm noticing that I'm getting shadows from above. So I'm going to pretend my sun is above the piece. It'll just be floating above the screen. So I'm noticing how a shadow is kind of coming here and here. You may not be able to see it on my screen, but hopefully you can see where there's a shadow from your candy. And I'll kind of use that as a reference. So to start with, we are going to take our watercolor brush and we're going to put it in our water. And I think first we're going to add in the shadows because I think that will really help us. So you can do, I would recommend starting with blue for your shadows. And you can go light at first. And we'll kind of just do an outline of our piece. It doesn't have to be perfect. My shadow's almost as kind of thick as this paintbrush is. And we can go back and make the shadows darker. And I wouldn't recommend using black for shadows. I mean, if you really, really want to, you can go ahead, but I recommend using some blues. You can always add black later if you're not feeling the blue. Alright, Alright, here's my shadows. We're going to add a couple more things to the shadows later on. We may make them darker. We may use some reflected light. Alright, so I think the next thing that we can do is, let's see, let's start with the shadows in our candy. So you may see some, nope, let me take that back. We're going to do the base color for each piece. So for my strawberry, I'm going to very lightly, I think I'm going to do yellow for the base color for my strawberry because you have those little seeds. And I'm just trying to plan ahead because then it'll be a lot easier to incorporate those seeds later on. And you can kind of see where there's a highlight. So I think there's a highlight right there. So I'm going to leave that part white. And you may need to wait a little bit for your candy to dry. Maybe I'll wait on this part because I think that's going to be green. So I'm going to do a light color in green. And we'll make sure that we add lots of water to this part because we'll go from light to dark. We had some yellow there, and now let's do this one. Now I'm seeing some highlights on the wrapper right over here. So I'm going to leave some little white squiggles. I'm not going to be entirely accurate about it. So I'm leaving this part white because that's kind of the highlight of the wrapper. And I'm seeing some white highlights right over here. And there's some highlights on these stripy things on the wrapper to make it closed. So I'm going to leave those as well. Righty, and then I'll do the last one. I think I'll do the base color of a very light red. I'm going to make sure I avoid the swirl because I think I kind of want to leave that white. And you have a little bit bigger of a paintbrush, so you may have to get a little creative on how you do your details. You can use the corners, or your paintbrush is very straight and thin, so you could probably get away with just doing a quick mark just like that. Maybe your shadows may bleed into your candy, but that's okay. I think that'll look really cool. Alright, and now I'll add a little bit red on here. I'm going to pretend to do those red markers. I'm just going to do little scribbles. I don't feel like drawing that. And that's okay. And I should mention that what we're doing is a still life. And a still life is basically like, it's an artwork depicting inanimate objects. So these pieces of candy are not living, so they're inanimate, non-living objects. Alright, and so our next thing is I think we can start adding more colors. So I think I'm going to add some orange to this yellow piece of candy right here. And I only want it to be slightly darker. And I'm noticing how around this edge it's a lot darker than this part. So I'm just going to do a little crescent over here. Maybe it goes into here. Here we go. And I'm noticing how my shadow has a little bit of orange in it, so I'm going to add some orange there. That'll make my shadow look really colorful. Right, and while that's drying, let me add some more oranges to this part of the wrapper. So maybe I'll do some lines, This part looks a little orangish. Remember, going from light to dark, so make sure your colors have a little bit more water in them at the moment while we do this. I see a little outline of orange right there. Alright, and then I'll go over to the strawberry. Maybe I'll add in those greens that I forgot to for the wrapper. So the base color. There we go. That's still drying. I'm going to wipe some of that off. And I'm noticing some greens right there, so I'm going to add those little zigzags. I'm going to be kind of abstract, not too realistic, I suppose, with some of the finer details. I'm more concerned about the overall shape. Maybe I'll go down to this wrapper and maybe I'll start to add in some shadows. I'm going to do a very light blue for the creases in the wrapper. So I see some blue right there. Here we go. There's some blue on this part. Oh, and I forgot to add, I want to add in some greens and reds into this shadow right here. So I'm going to add some green into this blue shadow that we had made earlier. And I'll add some red to this part right here because I think so if you look at an object, sometimes the light will hit it in spots you didn't really see before. So like in shadows, like the red from the wrapper will kind of hit the shadow, which will make the shadow red. Or like on this piece of candy, the orange will kind of hit this shadow right here and kind of make the shadow a little bit orangish. I'll add some red. Ooh, that's a lot of red. We'll fix that later. And so our candy is really starting to show. It looks like this part's a little bit darker, so I'm going to start to add the red to my strawberry. I'm going to leave little white spots for the seeds. I'm not going to be too particular about those seeds. You probably can't see it from this angle, but there's some strawberry seeds on this part of the wrapper too. And maybe some light from this piece of candy is hitting this piece of candy, so maybe I'll add a little bit of pink onto this piece. Maybe it's hitting it right here. I'm going to make this part of the candy a little bit darker, so maybe I'll add some blue, but I don't want it too dark, so I'm going to put my paintbrush in the water, kind of make it slightly lighter. I think I added too much water, so I'll dab that up a bit. And I see some orange over here that I didn't notice before. And we'll just progressively get a little darker. I'm noticing this part of my candy is almost the same value as this part of the shadow, so maybe I want to make this shadow a little bit darker, so maybe I'll add some more blue, try to make that darker. That's a lot of blue. We'll fix that. I think it works. Maybe I'll do the same over here too. So we're getting there. We're almost done. So you can really start to play with colors. I think I want to make this part darker, so you know what? I'm gonna be weird and I'm gonna add some green very lightly. It didn't work out how I planned. I'll add some red over top of that. I want this part right here to be darker because it looks darker on there. The water is very drippy though. Maybe I'll add some blue into this orange. So I want to maybe try to play with colors on the opposite sides of the wheel, so complementary colors. Because it'll kind of start to make some of the shadows on the candy a little bit darker. I'll re-add those weird strawberry things. Right. And there we go. So here's my little candy thing. You can add more, oh no, it's bleeding. You can add more details if you would like. You know what, I take that back. Let's add a few more things. So a lot of times you think you're done and then you look at it again and you decide that no, you are not done. There's a few more things that you could add. One thing I think I'm going to add is, so a lot of this wrapper is green, especially on the edges right here, and I feel like this green hits this wrapper right here. So I want to make sure that these candy wrappers kind of have a relationship with each other. It looks like they're in the same picture. So maybe I'll add a little bit of green right here, just a touch. And maybe some of the green over here slightly touches this pink swirly piece. Great. Yeah, I like that a lot more. Alright, so here's my finished piece of candy. I know my computer angle makes it very weird to see, but anyway, I would love to see your still lifes of your candy, and make sure that you can sign the back of your piece when you are finished and it's all dried. I should also mention, make sure that when you're done with your paintbrush to give it one extra rinse in your water cup so that way it stays extra clean, and then just wipe it off on your paint rig, and then you are all done. And once you are finished, you can definitely munch on your pieces of candy. I sure will be. So anyway, I definitely hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you for next week.